Today we're going to take a look at Chopin's Mazurka Opus 59, number 1. It's one of my favorite mazurkas, and I'd like to take a look at how he deals with form, how he constructs melodies, and how he uses harmony within this piece. Let's first play through some sections. So those were the opening 12 bars made up of 2 main melodies. Each has 2 smaller sections, I would say. The first melody, part 1, part 2. The second melody, first part, second part, which is longer. And this is more like just a resolution to this whole section. In this whole section, the key is really established. First of all, the first part of the melody outlines an A minor triad and then outlines an E major triad. So a minor 1 to 5 movement, and it returns back to A minor. And if you notice the melody, it is first falling. It weaves around the chords, falls, and then it rises back up. To resolve, we're just going from D minor, which is the 4, 5, 5, 7, back to 1. Now, a detail that I really love is that when the melody is rising, for example, measures 3 to 4, and measures 7 to 8, it's matched with a line below it, adds this really nice color. And it's also when the chord changes, but just the way it's voiced and spaced. I think it's very special. These details are what make pieces like this stand out, in my opinion. Without that, for example, of course, it's still really, really beautiful. There's something missing. And it's not resolving right there. That is left out, and instead you have the bass note. Okay, moving on. I view this section mostly as a transitional 12 bars, mostly made up of harmonic shifts, particularly these 5 to 1 sequences. So we're going from B7, E major, that top note, so G sharp within an E major chord becomes the top note of the next 5 to 1, which is B flat 7, A flat on top, going to E flat. And then same thing, that G, which is the third of E flat, becomes the top of an A7. So that's why these sequences work and you hear them all the time. And from there, this is measure 17, we have an A pedal. going A7 to D major and cycling back and forth until the bass note rises for a D sharp diminished chord, and we're returning back to the main melody in measure 25, but this time it's in the left hand. So instead of up here, it is accompanied by this really beautiful dotted line in the right hand. I'm sorry about the occasional crackling of the mic. I can hear it, and hopefully it doesn't bother you too much. But moving on, if we take a look at measures 27 through 29, this is an elaboration of measures 3 to 4. So 3 to 4, now 27 to 29. So there's a slight variation, a slight difference there, and we have a sense of progression. And again, measures 5 and 6 are now. All there is just a few notes added. Actually, just 2 notes, just B and A. Just to change up the flow. So 12 measures. At the end of that, the third, the minor third, gets raised. So now we're in A major, the parallel major key. So I would say from measure 37 all the way to measure 78 is sort of like a development. So this is not a sonata form, and it's also not a simple ABA form either, but it is close to the constructs of an ABA form. So you can call this the middle section, and it really develops in a lot of ways. It first starts off with this march-like chorale. In the parallel major key, A major. So starting from measure 42, we have a lot of melodies, a lot of elaborate ones, a lot of counter melodies, a lot of counterpoint, and there's just a beautiful and tense weaving of all of these lines, and it just creates more and more tension and more buildup until the next little section here with the chromatic lines. We'll get to that in a moment. So first of all, the melody from measure 42. It's really a pianistic melody because it's quite elaborate, it's notey at parts. I just view it as pianistic. It's less vocal than maybe the opening melodies. And counter to that, we have that line. And also if you take a look at some of the top notes in the left hand, there are also melodies. For example, 50 to 51. Combined with the right hand, counterpoint. Again there, shortly after. And let's just go straight into the section with the chromatic lines, because I think that is very key to adding a very distinct character to this particular mazurka. So like I said, the chromatic lines, these are so distinctly characteristic of this particular mazurka. When I think of this mazurka, I think of this lonely, intimate line. There's something lonely about this line, just the characteristic of it, and these chromatic lines. This section here from measure 57 to 78, before the return of the melody, is divided into 4 parts. And each part has a melody first, and then it trickles down with a chromatic line. The first one goes from E minor to B minor to F sharp 7, and then back to B minor. And this repeats. But the second time it goes E minor, G major, D7. Those aren't the exact placements, but you get the point. G major. We return back to the first form, so E minor, B minor, F sharp 7, back to B minor. And then measure 69, we have something different. We have E minor, B major, and then F sharp 7, F sharp 7, B major, F sharp 7, B major, because this is the last section and it ends with B major. And then be augmented before we return to the first melody, but now in a different key. So this section is basically what we heard from measures 1 through 24, except it starts off in the key of G sharp minor instead of A minor. So all of the notes have been lifted up a half step. And instead of staying there though, by measure 103, he brings us back to our original key. So the melody is in its original form, in A minor. How he does that is by utilizing these harmonic progressions here, or these sequences, these 5-to-1 sequences in the second section. So similar to what starts off in measure 13, from measure 91, we have these 5-1 patterns. So the great thing about harmonic sequences, whether it's going from 5-to-1 or 4-to-1, different types of circle of fifths patterns, whatever it is, when there's a pattern established, you can utilize it to keep going further to get to your destination key, or you can divert away from it in different ways. So it's a great modulation tool. So you see Chopin utilizing that. And once we return back to the A section, if you want to call it that, in measure 103, that's the beginning of just the ending section. You can call it a coda. I would call it a coda as well, but it's really just winding down And the way he does that is in measure 114. We have this deceptive motion. Instead of going back to A minor, we go up to the D sharp diminished 7th chord. And here, that gets repeated. And it ends in A minor. So I think I'll wrap up the analysis there. The intention that I have behind doing this sort of exercise is for me to just become familiar with how Chopin takes one idea, transforms it, puts it into different sections, and how he utilizes form and harmony. Of course, I'm interested in all of these things, but if I were to learn this piece as a pianist, which right now I'm not, but say that I intended to memorize this, I think this type of analysis is very useful in that regard because it helps you organize the different sections. Sometimes with pieces such as mazurkas or just Chopin's music in general, a lot of the sections are similar. And the beauty of going from section to section is that there are slight differences, but it's also difficult to memorize. But if you really point out, okay, what exactly is he changing here? What exactly is consistent? Then I think it can help you remember this without the score.